Hey Boxers, we're really excited about this next video. We're going to be showing you another entirely new feature with Buildbox 3D. We're going to be showing you how to work with scripting. In this video, we're going to be taking a closer look at scripting, and I'm going to show you a very simple but really cool example of how to get the most out of the scripting feature of this software. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to take a node that already has some coding in it, and I'm going to show you how to manipulate that code very slightly and create something completely unique and really cool. So I'm going to start off with something simple, and I'm going to choose the default template just to get underway. So let's just jump right into it here and double click on our 3D world, and then I'm also going to hit the preview button in the upper right hand corner just so you can get a look at what we're working with. We've got a stationary orange cube on a purple platform, and let's go ahead and change around some of the code on the nodes to spice this up a little bit. So I'm going to exit out of my preview window, I'm going to go over here to my objects menu, and I'm going to double click on my cube. For this demonstration, we're going to make some changes to the rotation node on this cube. So I'm going to click on movement here and drop down the movement menu, and then I'm going to select the rotate node. I'm going to drag it out here, and then if you want to take a look at the code behind the scenes on this rotate node, you just double click on the node, and then the code pops out here in this script editor window here. First, I want to briefly go over some of the code that you're looking at right now. You can see up here at the top that we've got a couple variables, speed and enabled, which is a boolean, which is either true or false, and we have a couple functions here. All three of these functions need to be in every single node. The init function is triggered the second that the node is used. The update function is triggered 60 times per second, so you really don't want to do too much heavy lifting here in this function. And then the signal function checks to see if the node is hooked up, and it'll return a value of true if the node is enabled, or for example the touch node to see if the node is being used, it being pressed or released. This is what checks right here, so the signal is going to look at other nodes to make sure that they're connected and being used. Now I want to show you something that is really essential for testing. So I was just talking about that signal node, and let's go ahead and test to see if the node is actually hooked up. We can see here that the node is not hooked up, but let's check the code and the output window to see if it is showing up there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter and add in a couple spaces, and then I'm going to go ahead and put log, then parentheses. You're going to use the single quotes, and I'm going to put enabled and a colon. So this is just going to be checking, is it enabled? And then I'm going to print out plus and the enabled variable. So what it is going to do is it is going to print the word enabled, and then it's going to also include the value for enabled to see if it is false or if it is true. It's only going to be true if it's hooked up. So what we're expecting right now is for it to be saying false, 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 false. So let's go ahead and press play, and then I'll use the script editor here and check the JavaScript logs, and you can see that it is reporting false, 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 and it continues to do so, and it gets smaller and smaller, this little window here, and you can see that there's just a ton of different falses that are being reported in. So I'm going to exit out of this JavaScript log because you have to figure that it's happening 60 times per second, so that can happen quite a bit really fast. So let's go ahead and exit out of this preview window now, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up the start node to the rotate node, and then now what it should do is it should print enabled but also be printing true. So let's go ahead and preview real fast. Let's open up the JavaScript logs, and then now we've got a whole bunch of trues. Now I'm really curious to see if it was reported true on the very first go. Yes, it was. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So this is working perfectly and exactly how you would expect. It's a really, really good tool for testing out to see if your code is breaking down here or there. You can use this log here, and you can report it in to see if your variables are printing out and are coming out as you would expect them to. And then when you're done, you can either get rid of this line of code completely, or if you want to just note something out, you do the double / here, and then it creates a note here, and so it is no longer running this code. It is just a little note for the developer or for yourself. Okay, now let's start doing something that's really cool. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the speed in the Y direction to 360. And what this is going to do is it is going to spin the square in a full circle in a 360. And let me go ahead and just preview this so you can see. So you can see it's just spinning 360 over and over and over again. I'm going to exit out of the preview, and I want to show you what is actually making this work. So it is this if loop right here, and it's checking if enabled is true. And we have to, the only way enabled is true is if it's hooked up. We're going to create this variable right here, let ROT, which is going to stand for rotation, equal this entity, and this entity is the cube. And what they're referring to is this cube right here. So this is the entity, and that's what they're talking about in the code. And it's going, this ROT is going to be set to that entity's rotation. And so then it's going to set the rotation according to these variables in these speed, which is also set to delta time, which is being passed in to this update function, and it's happening 60 times per second. So it's constantly updating, and it's updating the speed and moving the object. And so this is what is making it actually spin. Okay, great. So now that we know why this cube is rotating, let's go ahead and add in another variable to not only make this cube rotate, but we can also affect the position to make the cube rise up and down. And we'll do this using a sine function. But first, let's go ahead and start off with a new variable. We'll call this counter. And we'll initialize it right now, and we'll set it to 0. Perfect. Okay, and as the function is constantly being updated, and this cube is being updated, let's go ahead and add in a little bit to that counter. So I'm going to make it so that the counter is constantly adding in new numbers and increasing the count based on delta t. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say counter plus equals delta t, which stands for delta time. Okay, perfect. So the counter is going to be rising, and then now let's go ahead and enter it into a sine function to make it rise up and down. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a line of code which is very similar to this entity set rotation, but we're going to do this entity set position. So let's go ahead and do this entity set position. And we'll do some parentheses here, and we'll set 0 for the x, and then we'll go ahead and use JavaScript math here, and we'll do math, and then lowercase sign here, and then more parentheses, and a counter. Let's use the counter here, and we'll go ahead and we'll close the parentheses for the y direction, and then we'll put in 0 for the z. So it's only going to be rising up and down, and if you know a sine function or a sinusoidal wave, it rises between the number 1 and -1. So we should be seeing this rise up and down now. So let's go ahead and preview it, and let's see what we've got. Awesome. Okay, cool. So it's a little slow. You can see that the cube is slowly rising up to 1 and then slowly descending down to -1, just very much like a sinusoidal wave or a sine function. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this preview, and we're going to do a couple more things to fine-tune this. So one quick thing I want to show you is I mentioned before that it is rising a little bit slowly up and down, and I want to go ahead and speed that process up, which is essentially shortening the wavelength of the sine wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the parentheses here, inside this sine, and I'm going to multiply the counter by 2. So it is going to be increasing. So now what we're going to see is it's going to rise and fall a lot faster, a lot quicker here. So you can see now that it has a little bit of a better flow. You can see that it's rising and descending down and falling down in a little bit of a smoother way. And I think this is going to be really useful, and I'm going to show you soon what this is going to turn into. So I'm going to exit out of my preview here, and let's go ahead and change a few more things. So one thing you probably notice is as the cube is rising and falling, it's actually submerging into the plane, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to stretch this script editor over here, and I'm going to make a few more changes to the code. So here in the y direction, we do want it to be raised up higher, but we don't want to mess with what's happening inside the sine function. So we're going to go outside of the sine function, and we're going to add 2. to this. So now it should be raised up a little bit higher. So let me go ahead and move a few things over here so we can make this a little bit easier for you to all to see. And let's go ahead and preview and see what is happening. Okay, great. You can see now that it's not submerging into the plane, it's actually rising just up above. And I think it would be kind of nice to make this cube a little bit smaller. So I'm going to exit out of preview here. I'm going to go into my 3D world and I'm going to use my scale tool, and I'm just going to shrink this down just a little bit. I have a feeling that's going to look a little bit better. So let's go ahead and preview it again. Okay, awesome. This has got the makings of something really, really cool. And so another thing that we can do right now is we can go into our asset library, we can go into our assets, and we can take this coin here and we're going to add it to our library. And what's really cool about adding this to the library is not only are you adding the coin image, you're also adding the mesh. So we have this really cool new coin mesh that we can use and add to our cube. So I'm going to go ahead and select my cube here. I'm going to edit the mesh here, and I'm going to use the coin OBJ file. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then now we've got this awesome little coin, but it's orange. So let's go ahead and let's make it yellow, something like this, a little bit more gold. Yeah, I think that's going to work for right now. Okay, awesome. So now let's take a look at what we've got. So I'm going to press play, and awesome, we've got this cool little spinning floating coin. And this is going to be really, really helpful for a lot of your games. I think a lot of you are going to be able to use something like this, and you can mess with some of the settings on here to really make it look super cool. So I'll go ahead and exit out of this preview right now. And there's one last thing I want to show you before ending this video. Let's say you want to take this floating spinning coin and you want to export it into another game, and you want to use this object and this really awesome asset that you just made, and you want to use it for your other games, or maybe you want to send it to a friend for them to use. Now, I've shown how to do this in another video, but I think it's really important to end this with scripting because you're going to put a lot of work into coding in your own special asset, and now you want to know how to export and then reuse it. So you just go to the asset that you've been working on, and then you right click it, and you can export the asset, and all you have to do is name the asset, save it where you want, and then you can send it off to a friend, or you can use it in another one of your games. We're really excited to add this feature to Buildbox 3D, and we just can't wait to see what you all make.